Folks, I am super excited to welcome to the fire pit. You know him, you've seen him, you've read his books, Elie Mystal, who is the author of Bad Law, the popular laws that are running America, and also Allow Me to Retort, the Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution, which we don't have anymore. So thank God you wrote a book that provided a guide for the shit that's gone. And he is also the justice correspondent at The Nation and the person that I go to when I need shit unpacked for me with this godforsaken Supreme Court. So, Elie, welcome to the fire pit. I am so happy to see you.
Danielle, nice to see you again. It's been a minute. For your listeners and viewers who don't know, you're like my first friend in media. You're one of the first people. You and Jason Johnson are the first people who kind of guided me through this Xanadu world of mainstream media. So always appreciate you for that.
Amazing. Thank you. So, Elie, I don't even need to set the scene for you, but I'll set it for the people that are watching, which is that the Supreme Court, the Roberts Court, pretty much has decided to label itself as the destroyers of the 20th century. Anything that is good, that advanced our equality, our justice system, whether that be abortion rights, affirmative action, voting rights, same-sex marriage, so on and so forth. This Roberts Court has said, we're done with it. And most recently, the thing that has been grating on me, and this was before this morning's announcement with regard to them possibly taking up a case that would overturn marriage equality in this country, something that I personally fought for on the front lines for many, many years as a national spokesperson, is the Voting Rights Act. So I want to start there. I want to start with what they just heard, why it's important, and where you think this is headed.
Yeah, so this is probably the most critical case that they're hearing this term. It's called Louisiana v. Callais, and it involves some redistricting, some gerrymandering in Louisiana. Louisiana, after the 2020 census, came out with a map that had 5 congressional districts that were majority white and 1 that was majority minority. Now, that might make sense to you if you live on the coasts and you don't know a lot about Louisiana, but Louisiana is only 56% white. It is 31% Black. I'm not a math lead, but if Black people are about a third of the population, then they should probably have about a third of the congressional seats, right? Like that's just simple math to me. And a court ordered them to do that. A court ordered them to make a second map with 2 minority majority districts under the Voting Rights Act. White folks sued. White folks sued, saying that the 2 majority minority district maps violated their constitutional rights. So their actual argument is that overrepresentation of white people in Congress is constitutionally required, and that the Voting Rights Act is not allowed to stop them from, again, overrepresenting themselves. That is the core of the case that went up to the Supreme Court last week, and that is the case that the conservatives are probably going to decide against the Voting Rights Act. They are going to say that white people have a point, that you can't use race to make a second majority minority district, even when you're trying to stop racism in gerrymandering. And that's pretty much going to be that. The key legal jargon thing that they're taking away is called Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. They've already got Section 4. They've already got it Section 5. Section 2 is pretty much all that's left. And the brilliance, the beauty of Section 2 is that it doesn't care about intent. Right? You don't have to prove that the white people were trying to be racist, right? So Louisiana can say, I don't have a racist bone in my body. And they can say, like, we have tons of Black friends. And it doesn't matter, because if the outcome is racist, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act says it is allowed to operate. And that is what they're going to take away. They're going to say that the Voting Rights Act cannot operate unless you can show that racism was the intended outcome of your electoral shenanigans. Janae Nelson, who I think you know, who's the head lawyer for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, she argued the case in front of the Supreme Court, and she said the Voting Rights Act does not require a confession or an admission of racism, right? And that's the whole point because, as you well know, Danielle, white people. I mean, especially in the before times. Now it's a little bit different, but white people are generally not out there saying we trying to do some racism today. Like they don't admit to it. They don't
Now
confess
they
to it.
do, but yes.
They always, yeah, now they're a little bit more bold with it, but like they
Right.
usually try to say like, oh, it was actually something else. This case is going to say unless white folks actually like write on the map this is for racism, then the Voting Rights Act can't operate, which neuters, which eviscerates the Voting Rights Act, and that is what's most likely going to come down 6-3 sometime in June. When that happens, just to put
Yeah,
the
yeah, please.
political
Yeah.
valence back
Yeah.
into the mix. When that happens, not only do you immediately flip one seat in Louisiana from black to white, which most likely means from Democrat to Republican.
Right.
Some analysts have said you can flip as many as 19
Oh, I thought it was
seats.
29.
I
Okay.
I
So you're
I
saying 19.
I heard 19. I
Okay.
haven't again, I'm not a math lead. I haven't done the math on it all, but some non-insignificant number of seats can be flipped before the midterms based on this case and this case alone. They're already trying it in North Carolina. North
Yep.
Carolina came out with a new map that just
Virginia just came out with a new map.
Virginia just came out with a new one. So they're anticipating the win and they're already doing the racism. And as much as we talk about the midterms and everybody got to get out to vote and all that kind of stuff, Republicans and white supremacists are trying to set it up so that it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They're not going to allow black people to save this country once again.
So, I mean, this is the thing that I think that is really important for folks to understand because, you know me, I am a profound realist. And so when I say that we're not voting our way out of fascism, this is the type of shit that I am talking about. When I say that I have very little belief that we are going to have midterms, and by that I mean a free and fair election, this is what I'm talking about. Because what Donald Trump knows and what we've seen with the polling is that he is now circling the drain at around 37%, depending on where you look, that his policies are wildly unpopular. He is wildly unpopular. 7 million people in this country came out to march against him over the weekend, that they need this. They need this rigging to happen in order for them to hold on to power. Can you speak to, though, the reason why Chief Justice John Roberts, has always had a special place in his heart for ending the Voting Rights Act? Because this is not coming out of nowhere. This is something that he has been chomping at the bit for since he was a teenager. So can you speak to that for us?
Most people don't understand that Chief Justice John Roberts has been the biggest enemy to black people, the biggest enemy to black people having full and fair equality in elections since Chief Justice Roger Taney, who authored the Dred Scott decision and said a black man has no rights that the white man is bound to respect. It is a
Yeah.
linear connection between Taney and Roberts on this issue. Roberts's first job out of law school was working in the Reagan Justice Department, and his job was to argue against the expansion of the Voting Rights Act in 1981, right? In 1983, right? So this
Mhm.
is a lifelong commitment from Roberts to kill this law. He lost that argument in the Reagan administration because amazingly, even Reagan was like, "Well, we can't mess with the Voting Rights Act. That would make us look racist, Gipper." Like even Ronald Reagan understood that they couldn't mess with the Voting Rights Act. Even George W. Bush understood they couldn't mess with the Voting Rights Act. But Bush put Roberts in as Chief Justice. This year, Danielle, is his 20th year as Chief Justice of
Wow.
the Supreme Court. And it has been a full on attack on the Voting Rights Act over the past 20 years. Roberts lost the battle, but has pretty much won the war against this law that he has always hated. And people never talk about that. Like people always act like Roberts is the moderate. Roberts
So, yeah,
is
some type of moderate or
the reason,
neutral, and he's
right?
not.
And I get it. Look, he's not running around with his flag hanging out of his pants like Sam Alito. I get that he is more genteel when it comes to these things. But make no mistake, John Roberts has been as black people, biggest enemy over the past 20 years since he's held unaccountable, unscrutable power. And this is just the latest eruption of Roberts' own racism against our people.
What has made this so even more disgusting than it is on its face, than what you've described to me, is the way in which, let's take Brett Kavanaugh, for instance. With the decision, with the appeal that went up to the courts most recently with regard to ICE and
Yep.
who they are allowing ICE to basically stop and frisk, right? Who they are allowing ICE to throw up against the wall, zip tie, rappel down from a Black Hawk helicopter. Brett Kavanaugh said, well, you can use race in instances to justify asking a question with regard to your legality and your citizenship inside this country, basically making it constitutional to stop and frisk, which was decided to be unconstitutional in New York City as a way to randomly assault Black people. And so, talk to us about how this decision is made, how the courts use race as a way to harass, as a way to subjugate, as a way to discriminate against people. But when we want to use race, for instance, with affirmative action, which they overturned, as a way to advance ourselves, as a way to ensure equity with regard to voting and entrance into university, that all of a sudden we can't use race then.
Yeah, you're almost being too kind to Brett Kavanaugh in his reasoning. Like, Brett Kavanaugh issued a decision that was straight up pro racial profiling. He called racial profiling, and I'm quoting him here, common sense. Because again, we were saying earlier that the white folks don't often admit to being racist. In this case, they did. In this case, the government of the United States straight up said that they were racial profiling people in Los Angeles. Straight up said, and again, I'm quoting from the government here, that they're using their decision on who they can stop is based on whether they speak Spanish or speaks English with a Spanish accent, what they are wearing and where they are when they are stopped, and what job they appear to be having was the actual definition of why ICE was stopping people. And Brett Kavanaugh called that common sense. Brett Kavanaugh called that level of racism common sense. And he went further and he said that there will only be a few actual citizens who are caught up in this mess, which is again ridiculous. It is his understanding of who's legal and who's
Oh,
not legal
ridiculous,
is
yeah.
just not even based on fact, right? He said it will only happen to a few people, and when it does, it will be an incidental, minor inconvenience. All you have to
Right.
do is have a brief conversation with ICE where you assure them of your citizenship, and then you will be let free. Well, first of all, brief conversation sounds like a motherfucker ain't never been stopped by ICE to me. Right? Because it ain't no brief conversation. Brett Kavanaugh, I promise you, is not walking around with his goddamn birth certificate in his billfold. All right? That's not a situation that Brett Kavanaugh is ever going to find himself in. It's a situation that millions and millions of Americans are finding themselves in. ProPublica recently released a report on 170 people that they tracked down who were American citizens
Yep.
who were abducted by ICE. And that report shows it was not a brief conversation. These people were brutalized. These people were thrown up against walls. These people were grabbed. These people were harassed. It was not brief. It was not minor. It was not simply an inconvenience. But Brett Kavanaugh gets a lifetime appointment and I don't. And so the Supreme Court, again, 6-3, authorized racial profiling from ICE. And I kind of rolled this back into a longer term issue I had with the Democrats. Obviously, the Republicans are doing these racist things under the guise of immigration enforcement, but Democrats had a chance to abolish the very organization that is doing this right now. They
Yep.
had a chance to abolish ICE. They had a chance to completely reform the Department of Homeland Security in 2021 when Biden was president and Democrats controlled both houses of Congress. And when people like us
Yep.
were saying abolish ICE, we got called radicals.
Yep.
We were told that we weren't playing ball nicely, right? Like I now, as we go forward towards 2028, I am still waiting for the Democratic presidential hopeful to come out and say, I'm gonna abolish ICE on day one. I'm still waiting for that statement.
Not going to happen.
People are glazing JB Pritzker right now. I love JB Pritzker. He seems to have a backbone in him. Hasn't said that. Gavin Newsom, ICE is going into his state,
Yep.
brutalizing his people, his constituents. Gavin Newsom ain't say shit about ICE, right? Wes Moore, brother from Maryland, ain't say shit about. So, like, when are Democrats going to get a clue that people act like we have problems that we can't solve? People act like we have problems that are intractable. They're not intractable. They're policy. Change the fucking policy when you have the chance. And Democrats generally don't. Instead of, and this is kind of leading into why I wrote my second book, Bad Law, it's all about laws that should be repealed, right? Like, when you have the opportunity to change policy, change it. Democrats don't change it. They try to build. They try to build back better. They try to restore. They try to protect institutions. They don't smash the bad shit that Republicans left behind, right? It's like it's like an ex-boyfriend who keeps leaving a toothbrush in your in your bathroom, and instead of throwing the toothbrush out, you keep it clean just in case he comes back. Like, what the fuck? Throw it away. Throw these bad laws away. Throw something like ICE away when you get a chance, because if you don't, this is what happens.
And I think, like, and I appreciate you so much, because this is the shit that has people fleeing the Democratic Party. Myself, I have not changed my paperwork around being a Democrat, but do I align with the Democratic Party anymore? No, because I don't like to align with losers. And I'm tired of fucking losing. And I'm tired of being it when Democrats are in positions, to the point that you're making, to do something that is radical, to shift the course of progress. They always choose to uphold the status quo. That is what Democrats are good at, because why? They all get money from the same fucking people, right? And so if you take the money to preserve the institution, but you're like, but I'll be a better overseer of that institution, you're still overseeing a Gestapo. You're still overseeing an institution that is meant to harm people, right? And so I think that when we look at this, when you see the marches that are being done right now, there was just one activated. Sure that you saw it yesterday, after the raid on Canal Street in New York, right? The next day, yesterday, thousands of people were in the street in New York City saying, hands off our fucking people. You came for the wrong city, right?
Yep.
Like, we are not going to lay down and allow you to tear the heart out of what makes New York, New York. And I think that this is a message that would carry, right? Abolishing ICE maybe wasn't going to work 10 years ago, but it's a fucking message that carries now. Just like our talking about Israel and AIPAC wasn't going to carry 10 years ago, but now that we have witnessed the genocide on our phones, guess what? Right? It carries now. And so I feel like Democrats never read the fucking room, right? And that is why we end up in these positions. But the
As Slim
question that I
Charles
have.
once said, the game done changed, right? Uh, you have to update with the times. But this, Danielle, rolls back into one of my big points about John Roberts and the Supreme Court, because after everything we just said, who do we think John Roberts is afraid of? Who do we think John Roberts is afraid of, is
No one.
worried about in terms of taking away his power? The Democrats? Nah, son. John Roberts knows the Democrats are too weak to ever say boo to him. So if you're John Roberts and you have unscrutable, unaccountable, unelected, lifetime power, who's the one person in this world that can fuck you up? And the one
Trump.
person is Donald Trump. The
Yep.
one person is Donald Trump, right? Because the only thing that can fuck up John Roberts right now is Donald Trump saying, you know what? I don't care what Roberts said. I'm not going to follow one of his orders. I'm just not going to follow it, right?
Yep.
Roberts knows that the Democrats do not have the will or the strength or the alacrity to do that to him, but he knows that Trump sure as hell will if Trump gets a decision that he doesn't like. So what do you do with that information if you're Roberts? You give Trump everything he wants. You give Trump every single thing he wants, so Trump never has a reason, never has an excuse to ignore your orders. It looks like Roberts is giving away his power to Donald Trump, but actually it's Roberts protecting his own power, because Trump is the only person that can take it away. He's the only person that Roberts is worried can take it away, right? Roberts also knows, Big Mac willing, he will survive Donald Trump. Donald Trump right? Donald Trump either will be out in 2028 or he'll run again. He'll be out in 2032. Like, Donald Trump is not going to live for. Donald Trump is an 80-year-old man. John Roberts is 62.
Mm.
John Roberts knows that he's got a lot longer on this mortal plane than Donald Trump. He knows he will survive Trump. And when he does, when that cult of personality is no longer with us, John Roberts and his court will be left with all of the power it has accrued over these years and no Democrat with the balls to stop him. So the only thing Roberts is worried about is making sure that Trump follows his orders at every point, and the way to do that is to always give Trump what he wants. It's a jujitsu play. It's a 3D chess play from Roberts. He's seeing the whole board. Trump is just like, give me what I want now. He's like, all right, here's your bottle, baby, because you're not going to be here forever. And the Democrats do not have the strength to stop me. That is
So
the calculus.
I have two more questions before I let you go. And one is this, right? We have seen the weaponization of the Department of Justice. Right now, Trump is making true on all of his promises, going after his perceived enemies, right? Tish James being one of them, Bolton being another one, Comey being the last one as of right now. And he keeps trying to plant seeds around going after Obama, because my belief is that Black people are not out in the streets the way that he wants in order to be able to invoke the Insurrection Act, which is, to me, his ultimate goal. We are seeing, right, that they are itching right now for civil war. They are itching for violence. And I'm wondering for you, do you see any of these cases that he's bringing against his supposed enemies turning in his favor? Just given what you said about the Roberts Court and how these cases have to funnel their way up. I mean, they can be dismissed in the lower courts, then Trump will appeal to the higher courts. How do you see this shaking out? And and if it doesn't shake out in Trump's favor, meaning that these people end up either with penalties or in jail, what's the next course of action?
I don't know. I don't see these cases going anywhere, right? There is no there there. There is no law there. There is no argument there. I do not see how he can win, even in front of his handpicked Supreme Court, how he can win any one of these cases against Comey, against James, or against Bolton. But I don't think that that's his point. I don't think you got to remember how like small-minded and petty Trump is. Trump didn't go to jail. So the reciprocal response is not to send Tish James to jail. Trump felt harassed. Trump felt like he had to defend himself when
Right.
he was a criminal. And now he's making Tish do it. Now he's making Comey do it. Now he's making Bolton do it. That's the payback. That's the vengeance that he is looking for. And he's
Okay.
getting it because Tish James has to lawyer up. I saw one dumbass person online tell me like, well, I'm not really going to care when rich ass lawyers are getting sued. You think Tish James is
Is
rich?
rich
She's been a public servant for her entire
for her
life.
life. Yeah.
You think that woman's got money? I don't. She's having to expend her own personal funds to lawyer up. So is Comey. So is Bolton. That's the retribution that Trump wants. And when this case eventually gets kicked in a lower court, gets appealed, gets kicked by by an appellate court, maybe he'll appeal to the Supreme Court. I don't even know if the Supreme Court will take the case. Like they're so, and it doesn't matter because he's already done the harassment. He's already gotten
Right.
like 95% of what he wanted by harassing these people. I don't think he cares what happens so much after he's gotten his pound of flesh out. At least that's my hope. Because the other thing, right, is that if he's not satisfied, he controls the military. He'll just show up. He'll just send Cash Patel to Tish James' house, and she'll be in Uganda. By more like the if he's serious about it, he doesn't have to go through the courts, and he knows that. So like, it just becomes like how deep does this fascist want to go? And nobody. That's the problem with fascism. There are no guardrails. There are no rules. There is no this far and no further. So he might just show up. And I'm saying Tish James because she's the one in the spotlight. It might be you. It might be me.
Right.
It could be Ta-Nehisi Coates. I mean, who knows who pisses this man off tomorrow? And if you do piss him off tomorrow, who knows when the FBI shows up at your house? I think about Danielle. I think about this all the
All the
time.
time. I mean, yeah,
Right.
all the time. You are speaking my language. And I said two questions, but I have one more before our last question, which is, that all being said, Donald Trump has the military. The ICE has upped their weapons buying by 700%. 700%. I don't even know what that even means, right? They got rocket launchers now for fucking neighborhoods in San Francisco, the Castro and fucking Soho in New York. Elie, in your opinion, because you are like me, you are a realist, right? But you have children, so that makes you also an optimist, right? Because you can't be fatalist with children. This is what I know to be true. Um, what do you see as the end point? Do you see a general strike? Do you see people, getting out in the streets? Do you see a toppling of this regime? What do you see as the final straw?
Well, I don't think we are on the precipice of fascism. I think we are in fascism. Like this is what it feels like. There's not going to be a New York Times headline, fascism coming today. Like no, it's here. We are living through it. So I go to history here, and history tells me fascist regimes either last really short or very long, right? There's no kind of intermediate fascism. Either it's a cult of personality Hitler situation where the regime basically topples once the big man dies, right? Or it's an Augustus Caesar situation where you install the fascism and then it runs for hundreds of years. Like those are kind of your two options, right? So I'm obviously on the optimism in me hopes that this eruption of white supremacy and violence kind of tapers out once Trump leaves us, right? Like he's such a cult of personality right now. JD Vance, God love him with his eyeliner, he doesn't got
Doesn't
the
have it.
juice. He doesn't got the juice, right?
He doesn't have it.
I don't see the person who is supposed to carry the torch, like Don Jr. doesn't have the juice. Sorry, I had a cold. Don Jr. Ain't got the juice, right? So once Trump dies, perhaps put like this. Our next exit ramp is when Trump dies. There will be a vacuum of power. There will be a bunch of people, the crabs in a bucket, just crawling to try to like grab the ring. And if they all fail, that's our next exit ramp from this current outcrop of fascism. So that becomes my hope to survive this. And we're black. We do not come from a defeated people. We are survivors, right? We
No.
know how to survive white supremacy. We survive this eruption of white supremacy, and then we will have an opportunity to try to reform and rebuild the world. But we can't do it if all we've got are weak ass establishment institutionalists who,
Yep.
after Trump, are just okay. Let's rebuild, as opposed to let's reform and let's move forward.
Yeah. All right, final question for you, my friend. So, this show is the fire pit. It is where we gather for conversation, where we share stories. But the fire is also where we throw things in that are no longer serving us, where we burn up old ideas, experiences. It is a cleansing opportunity. So, Elie Mystal, what are you throwing in the fire pit today?
Well, you might have noticed that I'm using my vape here, and that's big for me because I was a cigarette smoker for 20 years. And I quit in over the summer, and I quit basically because of what we were just talking about. I quit because I realized that I needed to survive this man. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know that I need to outlive this fucking guy. And so one of my ways to outlive it, I started working out a little bit. I've lost some weight, but I also quit smoking, and so I am throwing once again, because when you quit smoking, it's like every day is a new day, right? I
Right.
am throwing my 20-year habit of cigarettes into the fire pit in my attempt to outlive this fucking guy.
Yo, I love that though. I love I love that your health journey is about outliving Trump. Like I think because when I no, seriously, because I started going back to working out and I was just like, because this is my resistance training. Like I need to be stronger and sharper than these people and healthier than these people. So I love that so very much. Elie, it is always, always a pleasure. It has been too long. I hope the next time we talk, it will not be so much time in between. Thank you so much for your continued fight, for your words, for your passion. I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a great one.
You too.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.